All right. So after everything's installed and you've activated your environment, and we've tried a couple different ways of installing packages, either using conda install or pip install. And we just had a visit from a Shiba Inu dog, which was amazing. A great omen, a great blessing for our course. All right, so now we can play around with Python. So first thing we're going to do is we're in this environment, and we're just going to type Python. And this is going to bring up the Python interpreter, which is this like interactive shell for doing Python. So if you wanted to do some basic coding, you could just type Python, and you can say, I want to do some math, or I want to assign some values to variables, and then I can do math that way. And just about anything you can do with Python, you can do in this interactive shell. And you can see that when it opens up, it says Python 3.7, or maybe whatever version you're running, it should say there. So that's useful. There's a little bit of help information, but we're not going to do too much with this right now. I will have you play around with this for your assignment. So I'm going to type exit with parentheses. It might work with just a regular exit, although I think with the regular interpreter you have to type those parentheses, otherwise it will give you an error. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to open IPython. So IPython, as it says here, is an enhanced interactive Python shell with support for data visualization, distributed and parallel computation, and the browser-based Jupyter Notebook. And then we'll see in a minute, Jupyter Notebook provides support for code, text, mathematical expressions, inline plots, and other rich media. So it's a really nice interface. So let's now try IPython. So instead of typing Python, we're going to type IPython, interactive Python. So this is going to do something very similar. It's going to give you a few lines of information about which version you're running, but you'll see the prompt looks a little different. It's got a green number 1 in brackets, which says that's input line number 1. So now if we do some math, whoops, what was that? I typed something. So now if we do some math, we'll see that we have output that has its own line. So there's some advantages for that. That basically creates a dictionary of values that we've input and exported, which we'll cover a little bit later in the class, how this all works. So there's a number of features for IPython. If you want to learn more about it, you can type question mark for help, and it will bring up this quick help. Like this is like a manual page or a less style page. So if we want to get out of this, we just type Q for quit. I'm getting some weird stuff showing up on my prompt. I'm not sure what's going on there, but it seems to go away. And that's all I wanted to cover there. So now we can type exit, and we should not need the parentheses for IPython. But if you type with the parentheses, it'll still work. Okay. So now we want to try the Jupyter Notebook. This used to be called IPython Notebook. It's very similar to it's the same idea as an IPython notebook, but it's called a Jupyter Notebook because it can handle other programming languages beyond just Python. But for this class, we'll use it for Python. So we're going to type. We already did the source activate or conda activate. This is just a rehash. We don't have to type that. We can just type Jupyter Notebook. But typically, when you're just starting up for the first time, you'll need to activate that environment. And what it's going to do is it's going to open up a browser window. And you're going to see all of these folders. So I'm in my home directory. So what I should have done, I'm going to go ahead and close this. So I'm going to type on my Mac, I'm going to type Command W. Close that. I'm going to go here and I'm going to type Control C. And it's going to say, do we want to quit, shut down the notebook server? I'll type Y, or I'll just hit Control C again. And it's going to bring me back to my prompt. So what I wanted to do was go to SIO 209 first. And now I'm going to type Jupyter Notebook again. So now you just see, again, yours has a lot less. You might just have one folder called Lessons. So we can click on that, and you might have some various files in that folder. So we've now opened up the Jupyter Notebook server. If we actually want to open up a notebook, we can go over here to New, and there's a few different options that we're going to have. We're going to have making a notebook here. The only option I have is a Python 3 notebook, but we could also make a text file, a folder, or actually open up another terminal window, which can be kind of handy. So we're going to open up a notebook, and it's going to just be called Untitled up here. We can change the name if we want, but we can also write some code. So we can do Python here too. So we can type 2 + 2. And then to execute that cell, I'm going to hold the Shift button and then hit Enter. Alternatively, you can go up here and hit this button that says Run. That will run the cell. Sorry, I'll make this a little bigger. Now, you'll get the hang of this, I promise, because we're going to use this every day in class and for all your homeworks. So this will seem strange at first, but you will get very comfortable with this. But there are some keyboard shortcuts. If you go up to Help, there's a user interface tour, which will walk you through the user interface. This is new for me. I actually haven't done this, so it's pretty cool. And then I'll exit out of that, and then there's a section here for keyboard shortcuts, which are really handy. But for the time being, you can use these buttons and menus to move around. So you'll have a little chance to play around with that with the assignment. And in fact, I think what I'll have you do is not only play around with this, but complete the rest of the crash course as your assignment, because we're going to run out of time for that today. So when I close this window, it's going to ask if I want to stay or leave. If I stay, it'll give it a chance to autosave, which is kind of handy. Now if I exit again, it'll let me exit because it already saved. And you'll see that notebook is running here. It should say green next to Untitled. So we don't have to, but we can shut down that notebook. We can select it and then click this orange button that says Shut Down. And we can, since there's nothing there that we really need, we can even select that and then delete it, which is with this red trash can. It will ask us, are you sure you want to delete? And we can say yes, delete. Or you can leave it there. It's up to you. You can always make another one and play around with it. When we're done, we can close this window and then go back to the terminal. And you'll see there's this running kind of log of various actions that we've taken. So if we want to have another window, we can open up another tab to do things. But since we're done with the notebook for right now, we can hit Control C and hit Control C again, or type Y, and that will shut down the notebook server. So the way that this works is that the notebook server is running on your computer, and then you're just using a web browser as your kind of client to access what's going on the server. And that web browser is just pointed to this URL, which is http://localhost:/, usually it's 8888, and then if you make another one at the same time, it would be 8889, etc. So you can point your browser to this link, and you will then, if you ever, for example, if you ever close your browser while you're working, you can always get back to it if you go to this link.
So you don't need an internet connection?
You don't need an internet connection. It's just using the web browser as the graphical user interface for the notebook. You do not need an internet connection. It's just using HTML as the way to render the notebook. Question?
So I recently logged out.
Mm-hmm.
The Jupyter notebook that we were just in,
Mm-hmm.
and I went to click on it again. It said localhost refused to connect.
Yeah.
Is that something that happens often, or is it? I was also prompted about tokens and that kind of thing. I need to enter like a password or something.
Yeah. I can take a look at what you're happening, because I'm not sure exactly what's going on. But for sure, once you close the, if you do what we did, where we hit Control-C and we shut down the kernels, if you go back to this link, it will not. There'll be nothing there. It won't work. So let's see. So the way we're going to do every lesson is we're going to open up a terminal, go to the lessons folder, download the lesson for the day, then activate the Python environment, and then open up Jupyter Notebook and open up the lesson. So that's going to be, we're going to do this every day, every class. So for the Windows users, it's slightly different. You just, at least on Windows 7, there's not a one-size-fits-all solution as far as I know, but for Windows 10 there's this Linux or Unix interface that does work. But so there's instructions for both Mac and Linux and Windows users. So we're already in our SIO 209 folder. So let's go to our lessons folder. So if we print the working directory, we'll see we're in SIO 209/lessons. And we're now going to do the curl-o thing that we've done a couple times. So we're going to go up to the top, because this is really where we're at right now. We're going to click on raw. We're going to copy that link, or you can go up here to copy. And now in our lessons folder, we're going to type curl-O, and then, of course, there's spaces between these. And then in double quotes, we're going to paste that URL, another double quote, and then hit enter. So that'll download that file. Now, if we go back to follow along our instructions, so we've just done the curl-O. In Windows, you can switch over to your Anaconda prompt and then launch the Jupyter Notebook. So we're going to type Jupyter Notebook, and then hit enter. And now in our lessons folder, we have all these other files, but we now have a lesson 04.ipynb. So this is IPython Notebook is the extension, or also called a Jupyter Notebook, but the extension is .ipynb. The file type is actually what's called a JSON file, but the extension is .ipynb. So if we click on that, it will open up another tab, and we'll see the notebook that we've been using today. Everything that we've been doing today is an IPython notebook. And this top part is just what's called Markdown format. So if I double click on any of these things, I will see what's actually going on underneath. It's a Markdown format here. And if I want it to if I want to render it again, I can just run the cell. So when you run a Markdown cell, you just render it as Markdown format. But when you run a Python cell, it will execute the code. So there's different kinds of cells. The main two ones are Markdown and code. And the code is Python 3, and we know that because it says Python 3 up here. And there's a little Python logo. And in fact, we can even see which we can even, if we had a different Python version, we could even change the kernel. But we can then go ahead and start running some Python code. There's a question?
Does it not read a empty file?
What's that?
Does the Jupyter Notebook not read
.md. No, you cannot open a Markdown file with Jupyter, but you can take the text that's in a Markdown file and copy it and paste it to a Markdown cell in the Jupyter Notebook. So you can add an insert. You can insert a cell, and I can change this to Markdown format, or change it to code, or don't worry about what these other two are for now. So in Markdown, I can type some text, and then when I want to delete it, I can just select it. So one other key, shortcut: if I want to edit that text, I can hit Enter, and I'm now editing it. If I want to stop editing, I can hit Escape, and now you can see it changes from blue to green when I'm editing to blue when I'm not editing. When I'm not editing, when that's blue, I can just type X and I can delete that cell. If I made a mistake, I can go up to Edit and say undo delete cells, and I just undo that. But I wanted to do that, so I'm going to delete again. Or I could go up here to delete cells, or I can cut the cell and paste it somewhere else. So a lot of options. So we saw we can do some math and then variable assignment with Python. So there's a lot of stuff now in the rest of this notebook that you'll kind of get exposed to the things you can do with Python. And my plan was to go through all this in class, but since we have a big class, it took some time to get everyone set up, which is fine. It's understandable. And we won't have to do that. We're going to kind of work through that now, and then for the rest of the quarter, we'll be good to go. So I think what I'll think about this, but I think what I'll have you do is go through this on your own, and then you're going to get some reinforcement in the assignment. In fact, the assignment for this week is quite easy, so I think it's fine to give you a little bit more to do. So that is all for today. I'd like to thank all of you. I'd like to thank the Shiba Inu dog that came, our mascot. It is a great omen. I have a great feeling about this class, even better than I did before. So thank you all. Have a great weekend, and I will see you on Monday.